Today's going to be a fun video. I spent the last year testing just about every vibe coding tool on the market, and I've spent countless hours building real applications with the vibe coding tools. So I'm going to rank my favorite vibe coding tools of 2025, and I'm going to put them in this matrix from lower ability to higher ability and easier to use to harder to use. So you know which vibe coding tools you should use as we go into 2026. Overall, it's just going to be a fun video to look back on the last year and see where I would put all of my favorite vibe coding tools in these rankings. So let's get started with something that I think is on the easier end, but also has a little bit less ability. By the end of the video, this is going to be completely filled out with my favorite vibe coding tools of 2025. The first tool we're going to start with is new.website. If you haven't heard of new.website, it is a vibe coding tool that allows you to easily launch a website. So by website, I mean the web page that's static, or it could have forms or some dynamic CMS images or data that's showing up. But overall, it's just a website that people are going to go to learn about the service that you're providing. This is really great if, let's say, you're a restaurant, you provide a service like lawn care, cleaning service, that type of thing. You need a website to show people what your service is. There's also things like personal websites, so you can showcase your portfolio, what you've created. So new.website makes this really easy to do, and it has all of the features that you need for a website. So this is definitely one that I do recommend checking out as we go into the next year. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to say it has lower ability / power because it's not able to actually build a full app the way that other tools that I'm going to talk about later on can do. But it's also really easy to use. This is something that I would recommend to someone who's non-technical, and I would feel comfortable that they would be able to actually use it. So this is going to go over in the bottom left corner, easier to use, but lower ability / power. The next tool is one that you probably have heard of because it's one of the most popular vibe coding tools out there. And that tool is Lovable. So Lovable allows you to create both websites like new.website, but it also allows you to create fully featured web applications with a backend and a database and logic and everything built in. It is one of the first vibe coding tools that became really popular. So you may have used Lovable yourself. And I have a lot of tutorials on No Code MBA about how to use Lovable. Check out the channel for a ton of videos about this tool. And a couple things that you should know about it is that both it can connect to Supabase as the backend. So you can use it with your own backend, but it also has something called Lovable Cloud, which it just released recently, which gives you the ability to have the backend fully integrated into Lovable. Although I did notice that it didn't work quite as well as some other tools, but it does have that ability if you want to have that fully integrated backend into the platform. So right now, I would put Lovable at higher ability. So it's going to be over the line here. It's a little bit harder to use, but I would say somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to put it higher ability, easier to use than, or harder to use than new.website, but more capabilities. So I'm going to put it here. And as I keep adding on more tools, I might move these around a little bit. And I'm going to talk about how they all compare to each other as I keep adding more tools to this chart. So be sure to stick around as I continue to put tools on here that you've heard of and probably some that you haven't heard of as well. So the next tool is Mocha. If you haven't used Mocha, I definitely do recommend checking it out. I also have some videos on No Code MBA's YouTube channel about it. But the thing that you should keep in mind about Mocha, and the way I like to think about it, is it's kind of like the Apple of vibe coding. So it's really clean. It comes out with really nice designs, and it's really easy to use, but still has a lot of power. So it has the full backend integrated. Now it is fully integrated, meaning you can't have your own Supabase database, but that can be good in a lot of use cases to not have your own Supabase database if you don't need it. Especially if you're not technical, and you just want to build an app with a backend database, which is most people, I would say, Mocha is a really great option. And I also found, I actually created a video about this, that when I compared it to Lovable, at least with the backend functionality, so comparing Mocha's backend functionality to Lovable's backend functionality, where using the Lovable Cloud, so not using the Supabase integration, but directly using Lovable Cloud, Mocha seem to do a little bit better than Lovable when I put them head to head. Now, something to know is all of these tools are constantly being improved and updated, so you do want to check them out for yourself, but this is just my experience testing out these tools recently. So with Mocha, I'm going to put it as easier to use than Lovable, and I'm going to say about the same ability as Lovable. There's some pros and cons to each, but I'm going to put them about even here in terms of ability. Might put them actually both just a little bit higher. But yeah, I would put Mocha as easier to use than Lovable. Okay, so now we're going to move on to a different type of tool. We're going to come back to some other tools like Lovable and Mocha a little bit later on, but I'm going to move over now to Cursor. So if you haven't heard of Cursor, this is a little bit more of a technical tool. It started out really as a tool only for developers. This was when it first came out, and it was kind of an AI IDE, so developers could code, but have the ability to have the AI help them code. And now it's moved into more of what I would say the vibe coding space, but it's kind of the technical vibe coding space. So what that means is you do need to be a little bit technical and understand what's happening and not be intimidated by seeing the code. But it also gives you the ability to be closer to the code, and they have a full agent system. And that's similar to using tools like Lovable, where you can just chat with the AI and have it write the code for you. You have full control over the models that it's using. You kind of are just closer to the AI, closer to the agent, closer to the code. So I really like building with Cursor. A lot of times I might start with another tool that allows me to export the code. Like you can start with Lovable, have it kind of set everything up, and then sync to GitHub and move it over to Cursor. That's an option. There's another tool I'm going to talk about in a minute, created by Google, which is something that I've been doing recently with my workflow, which I'm going to talk about. But yeah, Cursor is really good and really powerful. So there's really nothing that you can't do with Cursor, but everything is also going to be a little bit harder to do. Now, the agents are really smart and getting smarter and making it easier. So just something to keep in mind. And I'm actually really curious in a year when I do this again, where all of this is going to sit and how these rankings might change. But for now, I'm going to put Cursor over at a little harder to use, but also high ability and power. So Cursor is going to go up here. Now, the next one is Google Anti-Gravity. This is very similar to Cursor, and actually it's created by the team that created Windsurf, which the team was actually acquired or now work at Google. So if you've heard of Windsurf before, it was a Cursor competitor. It's a little complicated with how Windsurf, the software, got acquired by a different company than the team, which ended up going to Google, the technical team. But anyway, Anti-Gravity is kind of Google's version of Cursor. I think it's pretty similar to Cursor itself. I haven't had a chance to spend hours and hours cross-testing both of these, but overall, I would say Anti-Gravity is definitely something to check out because I was impressed with the initial results. So I'm going to go ahead and put it over here, and I'll put this basically overlapping with Cursor. I'll put it, I don't know if I can fully overlap it, but I'll just put it like right around here. Pretty similar in terms of ability and ease of use, hard to use, pretty similar. So I would put Cursor and Anti-Gravity together, combined there. The next tool I'm going to talk about here is Google's AI Studio. So this is a free tool from Google that allows you to go in and actually test out all of Google's models, and you can both chat. So it's almost like having ChatGPT or Gemini inside of Google AI Studio, but it also gives you the ability to vibe code and build MVPs with Google's AI models. So this is what it looks like. It allows you as a developer to go in and test all of Google's models, and then you can sync your code to GitHub, start building it in Cursor, or just see how everything's set up. And they give you the ability to kind of test it out and then use those APIs in your own projects. So my favorite part of Google's AI Studio is the Build tab. And this is where you can actually vibe code your own ideas with Gemini, and it can automatically integrate the Gemini models into your app. So just as an example, here's an app that I was playing around with and testing out. It's essentially an AI to-do list, kind of a chief of staff for yourself. And the idea is that you could write what you want to do or want to accomplish. So I could say, record a YouTube video, and then you can send that off, and then it's being processed by the AI. So it's automatically hooked it up to Google's Gemini AI service. And then here we can see it created 3 tasks for me automatically, and I can check them off. And then it puts them into the logbook. So just a little prototype I was playing around with. But you can also then sync this to GitHub, then open up the project in Cursor or Anti-Gravity. All you'd have to do is add an API key that would be like a Gemini API key, which you can get really easily through AI Studio, and then everything will still work. But then you would start paying for the API calls. So that's the other thing is here inside of AI Studio, you don't have to pay for the API calls. Now, there are some limits, like if you're using Nano Banana Pro, for example, then you would have to enter your own API key and pay for it just because it's expensive. So they don't give you full unlimited access, but they do give you a lot of unlimited access to test things out. And I was seeing on X that pretty soon they're going to also have user authentication and a backend built into AI Studio, and that'll be done through Firebase. So you will be logged into Firebase if you use that. But right now, that is not the case. You just have to sync to Cursor. Then you can add your own backend through Supabase, for example. So very easy to do that, but that is not something that is built in to AI Studio right now. So it's more just for prototyping AI apps. One of my favorite ways to do it. So let's go over here and let's see. I would put this into, actually, it's interesting because it's really easy to use. I really like the ease of use because it also has the ability to add AI functionality into your apps. So it's really easy to use. And then in terms of ability power, it is pretty powerful as well because of the fact that you are using the Gemini 3 Pro model for free. I'm going to put it about here. I'm really liking AI Studio, and especially once it has the backend built into it as well, it's going to be cool to see what happens there. So AI Studio, really liking it. I'm going to put that here. I might also just bump up the Mocha and Lovable capabilities as well, just because realistically, like those do have more capability than AI Studio, just because it has the backend capability right now, which AI Studio doesn't. So easier to use, I would say, yeah, let's put it a little bit less powerful than these. There's some things it does that's more powerful, but that's where I would put it. So I'm going to keep it there for now. The next tool I'm going to talk about is UX Pilot. This is a tool that allows you to design UX and UI and basically be your own AI designer. And I've been really enjoying using this tool. It allows you to quickly create designs. And something that I've just been impressed by is the quality of the designs that it's been able to create. So I'm not going to spend as much time on this one, but I am going to go ahead and put this a little bit lower because low ability, it's not actually creating websites. It's just a designer. I'm going to actually bump new website up a little bit because I think that it has more ability than a designer. It's actually building out websites. So UX Pilot's going to go down a little bit. And it's going to, under ease of use, it's going to be a little harder to use than new website. Not too much though, but I'm going to put it down here. But I still think it's worth checking out. So all the tools on here are worth you checking out. The next one, also in the design space, is Figma Make. Figma Make, the difference between this and UX Pilot is it's fully integrated into Figma. So while UX Pilot does have the ability to kind of create Figma designs and also import Figma designs, Figma Make is built by Figma, so it's going to do the best job of that. I've been really enjoying using Figma Make for prototyping as well. It does have the ability to add real data and connect to Supabase, but I found that it wasn't really amazing at that compared to other tools like Lovable, for example. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for that, but it does look like it's going in that direction and they're trying to add more functionality to it. So it'll be interesting to see in the next year what actually happens there. But in any case, I'm going to go ahead and let's put this also easy to use. And I would say, and it does have some website capabilities, but it doesn't have all the same kind of form functionality built in the way new website does. So I'm going to put that up a little bit. Figma Make, I'm going to put down. It's also very easy to use. So a little bit less ability power, but also definitely worthwhile. These tools are just going to be more in this quadrant because they are specifically for design as opposed to for everything, which is going to put you more kind of up here. The next one is Bolt.new. This tool came out around the same time a year ago as Lovable. Actually, I think it was a little bit before Lovable. I would say Bolt was like the first vibe coding platform that really went viral. Bolt, similar to Lovable, it's going to be able to build out your app. It can have a backend through Supabase. It also has their own cloud platform, which is very similar to Lovable. It has the ability to sync to GitHub so you're not locked in. So I would put Bolt.new in a very similar place to Lovable. Now, these tools are always improving themselves. As you can see, Bolt just introduced Bolt V2, which I have found to be really nice. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to put Bolt kind of interchangeable right now with Lovable. They're both very good, but it's hard for me right now to pick a winner. So I'm going to put them both around the same spot, both kind of in that relatively high ability and relatively easy to use. Not too hard, but kind of right in the middle there. The next tool is aura.build. This is one that maybe you haven't heard of before. This is built more for designs as well. So it's going to go more in that bottom left quadrant. But something that I really like about aura.build is the quality of the designs. I find that the designs that Aura builds is kind of unique and just doesn't look like an AI designed landing page. So I find it to be really good with that. It has really nice templates. So if you want a tool that's going to give you more unique designs, this is a tool that I would definitely check out. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's take a screenshot of the logo and let's put this over. I'd put it kind of similar to Figma Make. I would say it's a little bit maybe harder to use. It's not that hard to use, but it has a little bit more kind of options, which is going to just be a little bit more complex. And then maybe a little bit higher power and ability. Next, we've got Base 44. If you haven't used Base 44 yet, it's definitely worth checking out. I really like it. A couple things that make Base 44 different from something like Lovable and Bolt is Base 44 has always had the backend integrated into the platform. So that's something that Base 44 has always had, which has always made it a little bit easier for people to get started with. So Base 44 was acquired by Wix like 6 months into its creation, and it was created by a solo founder. So pretty cool story if you want to look that up. But there's something else that makes Base 44 a little bit different, in my opinion, from even Mocha, which does have the fully integrated backend. So what that is something called integrations. So with Base 44, you can just in one click integrate things like OpenAI. So that's going to give you AI capabilities in your app, which is going to be kind of similar to using Google's AI Studio, except you do have to pay for it here in Base 44, at least. But you do have to pay for it with AI Studio once you're ready to kind of publish it and enter your own API key. So it's really just in testing. It's free with AI Studio, but you can integrate it, which is really nice. You can also add things like Twilio for SMS messages. You can add 11 Labs. You can add all of these integrations, and they're also continually adding more integrations. But I like that they have these connectors. So that's something that, in my opinion, sets it apart and makes it even a little bit easier to use, but still is very powerful. So let's go ahead and I'm going to put Base 44 as powerful. It does have high ability power, and I'm going to put it almost equal here to like Mocha Lovable. I'm going to put these cursor anti-gravity even higher up, and then, but easier to use, even a little easier than Mocha, although not too much easier. It is similar, but I'll put it up here. Okay. And yeah, nothing over here, and I guess harder to use and low ability. I wonder if anything's going to pop up there. Not sure. I guess if it was in hard to use and low ability, probably wouldn't make the video, because again, everything I'm sharing are tools that I recommend and I think are pretty cool. The next one I'm going to talk about is a tool called Dyad. What's cool about Dyad is it's free, local, and open source. So you can use free open source models that can be on your computer. So you can literally use this without an internet connection. You also can connect it to more powerful models that are on the cloud, but it's fully open source. There's no lock-in whatsoever. That's one of its value propositions. So yeah, Dyad is a cool one that I also recommend checking out. It was the #1 product hunt product of the day, which is a pretty big accomplishment, not easy to do. So yeah, I would recommend checking out Dyad. It has a similar interface to something that you'd be used to, but you do have to download it onto your computer. And then once it's there, it's kind of an app on your computer that I recommend checking out with an open source model, especially if you have a more powerful computer. It's just a very cool feeling to be vibe coding with open source models for free. And Dyad does also have the ability to connect to add a backend. So I'm going to kind of put this over here. And they are kind of all bunching together. And that's interesting to see that a lot of these tools are similar. And a lot of it is going to come down to you testing them out, seeing which one you vibe with the most, and then deciding which one you're going to want to go with. Unless you want to use one of these tools like Cursor or Google Anti-Gravity, where you are a little bit more technical or want to be a little bit more technical and get closer to the code. The next one I'm going to talk about is Claude Code. So Claude Code is a tool that is fully in your terminal. This means it is actually even a little bit more technical than using something like Cursor. Now, you can use Claude Code inside of something like Cursor. So here's an example of what that looks like. And they do have a web and iOS version, but it still is, it's not exactly like lovable where you're going to have the preview built into it. It is going to be for people who are a little bit more technical. Now, it's not impossible to learn, and you can definitely check out plenty of videos on how to use it, but that's just something to keep in mind. I also find that right now, I've been enjoying using tools like Cursor, Anti-Gravity a little bit more because I have control over the model I'm using, and I think that they're getting really, really good at being agentic. That's something that Claude Code was kind of the first coding model that was like super agentic and did a really good job at kind of being an agent and deciding what to do and creating subtasks. And that's something that I think that Cursor and Google Anti-Gravity has gotten better at. But I'm going to put this over at harder to use, but also very high ability power. So I'm going to put this over here, kind of equal to Cursor and Google Anti-Gravity, but a little bit harder to use. I've got two more to show you. So first is Replit. So Replit was actually one of the earlier vibe coding platforms. And before AI, Replit was a tool that developers would use to actually write code and deploy apps. And it's been around for a little while, but they were also one of the first to add AI functionality into the platform and become a real vibe coding platform. They have a new tool called Agent 3, which I've been really impressed with. And they have something called Replit Agent, which essentially is an agent to build production-ready applications. Something cool about Replit is it's fully self-contained. It can add a backend, it can add a database, it can have user authentication, all within the platform. You don't have to use something like Supabase. It's just all built in, and it does a really good job at being agentic, fixing bugs, and doing it all in one platform. So again, it does start to be a little bit difficult to differentiate some of these because, they all are doing similar things. But with Replit, I'm going to put it at pretty high power, maybe even over lovable, because of its ability to just have everything fully integrated, but you also have full access to all of the code. You can export the code, you're not locked in. So I'm going to go ahead and put Replit, I would say high ability power, a little bit higher than these tools, but a little bit harder to use. So I'm going to put Replit over here. And by harder to use, that could also mean give us a little bit closer to the code. So harder to use could also be like kind of technical, right? Like more technical. I think that's actually a better term, and less technical. I think more technical, less technical are kind of good, better terms there, how I want to put these in the matrix. So yeah, Replit a little bit higher there, but a little bit more technical, kind of in between Cursor and these tools like Lovable, for example. And then finally, we have Codex. Now, Codex is both a model. So there's OpenAI Codex, which can be used inside of Cursor, but it also is similar to Claude Code, where it can be used inside of your terminal. So I'm going to put this it's very similar to Claude, I would say. I'm going to put it kind of neck and neck there, where both are more technical, but also have high ability power and are really, really powerful coding models. And, this is something that I would recommend. I would recommend learning about how to use tools like Claude, Codex, and kind of taking your vibe coding to the next level. Personally, for me, like I might, as I mentioned before, start projects over here, sync it to GitHub, start over here, and then use kind of a combination of Cursor and Claude Code or Cursor and Codex, for example, as I'm building more and more complex features. But that's just my personal preference. But there could also be examples of tools that are simpler, maybe internal tools, or if you're less technical, then you want to start with something like Base 44 or Mocha and kind of just have an all-in-one platform, and you never want to worry about this side of things. Then down here, we have things like new.website for just building a website, and then design tools, which are going to be actually very useful in tandem with any of these other tools, because you can design down here and then use it as You can take a screenshot or even use the code as starting points as you start to build out full apps. So they can all be used together. So you're not limited to just using one tool. You can combine these tools together. I know I said I was only going to show you two more, but I have a couple more I want to show you actually that are a little bit different. So we have Rourke. What separates Rourke from the other tools is this is specifically meant for building native mobile apps. It builds it in React Native, so it can be uploaded to the iOS store. Now, other tools can help you do that. You can definitely do that with other tools or build it in Cursor, but Rourke makes it really easy to do that. So Rourke, I'm going to put kind of in the middle, actually a little bit more technical here than Lovable and Bolt, but also I would say, yeah, a little bit higher in ability, different ability, right? Because it depends on what you want. If you want an iOS app, you go with Rourke. If you want a web app, you wouldn't, because you would go with one of these other tools that specializes in web apps. Finally, there's Emergent. So what's nice about Emergent is you actually can do both web apps and iOS apps, and it is pretty agentic. It has the ability to build anything that you want. I would say this is kind of in a middle ground here of Cursor and then these other tools here like Lovable, Dyad, Bolt. So maybe I'd put it a little bit over where kind of Replit is, but I would say it's easier to use than Replit, but is more powerful than these other tools. Now, the reason for that is because it has the ability to build mobile apps and web apps. And I've just found that the agents inside of Emergent are quite powerful and able to accomplish a lot without me having to intervene. So I also have a lot of videos on Emergent and these other tools as well. So check out our channel and subscribe to our channel to get more videos like this and to learn more about these tools that I'm talking about. So I think that does it for my 2025 roundup of vibe coding tools. Let me know what you think of this. Are there any that I missed? Would you have placed any of these on different places on this chart? I'd love to hear your feedback. And please let me know what you'd want to see as we go into 2026 on this channel. Things are changing really quickly with AI and vibe coding and no code, and I'm trying to keep you up to date as I'm learning as well. And I'd love to hear your feedback as I think about what to plan for next year. And if you're interested in taking your vibe coding skills to the next level, check the link in the description. Go to nocode.nda, check out our premium courses where we cover how to vibe code in more detail from start to finish, and we'll teach you how to build a full SaaS app on your own. Thanks for watching. Again, subscribe to our channel to get more free content like this, and we'll see you in the next video.